debate. And August did come to talk about this issue. Why? Because you're not relativists. You truly do think this matters, and not just anyone can arbitrarily pick whatever they want to believe, and that therefore it's valid. No one thinks like that. Another point that he uses a number of times is, evolution just kind of gave us desires for good and evil. It's just hardwired into us. Not much we can do. Nature just gave us these impulses. Think about this. Nature does not have desires. It has no concept of good and evil. How then can it give desires of good and evil? How do you get past that? We haven't seen a defense for how you can do that. He's just stated it arbitrarily. Just, this is how it is. Really? Nature has no concept of good and evil, and it gave us that. And you're not going to explain something like that? Also, let's just say somehow this is possible, and that's how it happened. What are we left with? What we're left with is really just a whole broad spectrum of actions we can take. He quoted all of those animals that did, supposed good things. Well, there's a lot of other animals who do bad things, like steal someone else's mate and rape them. Or cuckoos eat, I think it's a sibling, if they hatch first, so then they can get more food. There's cannibalism within nature. There's a lot of stuff that we would say isn't right in nature. But yeah, so we have all these different things we can do. Rape, pillage, murder, steal, help the poor, feed the homeless, help old ladies across the street. We can do a lot of stuff. What do we pick? Great, evolution gave me desires to do all these things. What do I do? Does evolution tell me what I should do? No, I got desires to do a lot of stuff. I don't do all of them, but it wouldn't matter. I should. I should just be able to arbitrarily, again, pick whatever I want to pick. So again, we're reduced to relativism. Which, if that is the case, morality then becomes absurd. It's just a grab bag. Another couple of things he brought up. It says, at the end, he says, we go to Paris to enjoy life. You are assuming that enjoyment itself even exists. How do you know that? It's just chemicals going off in your brain. You can see you have no foundation for enjoyment. You want all these things to be true. You want to go to Paris. You want to look at the Sistine Chapel and look at that art work and say, wow, that's beautiful. Or you want to go to all these big cities, or you want to do whatever you want to do. Like it has meaning, like it has enjoyment, like it has value, and yet your entire foundation cannot account for those things. Which drives back to my original point. He is borrowing from my worldview, and he doesn't even see it. He's given no defense for how he has a foundation for any of this stuff. He just arbitrarily assumed it to be so, and that's just the way it is. I'm sorry, that's not a debate. If I got up here and I just said, this is just the way it is, God's true, sorry. I would accept that. No, we came here for a rational interchange. We came here to do debating. Have a logical interchange, not just to say arbitrarily how things are. One of the things he brings up is this supposed problem that, is it good because God says it is good? Or does God say it's good because it is good? Well, really, these questions are the same. And even some Christians, I would say, do disagree on this. But really, you look at the question and you ask them, why is something good? They will say because of the nature of God. It's good because God's nature is perfect and unchanging. And so, is this good just because God says it's good? He says it's good because it's in his nature. He can't just arbitrarily change his mind anytime he wants and allow something else to be good when it was evil. Why? Because his nature doesn't change. And so really, this isn't a problem at all. I like how he opened his comments for the debate. I thought he was going to address the issue. He says, all I have to do is give an example of an atheist being good, and hey, I've won the debate. Oh, but that would be too easy. And yet, he doesn't even account for what good is in this entire debate. He said 40 minutes. He cut off 7 minutes early, and he still doesn't address the question. So, no, I could just give examples of atheists being good. Really? How do you know those actions are good? Again, you keep going back. You get to, well, he just believes it. Again, mere speculation, leaps of faith, the very thing he doesn't like. And then actually he mentions my argument in this debate, and he doesn't even address it, which I thought was kind of interesting. Right after he made those comments, he says, some people might argue that we're borrowing from the Christian worldview to do good. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And he hasn't responded to that, saying, no, we have our own foundation for good. All he's done is given arbitrary statements about evolution, who has no desires, has no good and evil, somehow gave us that. It's almost like the evolution of the gaps fallacy, you could say, for morality. Again, when he says consequences and empathy are the real standard of morality for humanists or for society, how does he know that? Who said that empathy and consequences should be what we determine right from wrong? Why not the opposite of that? Why don't we take Hitler's standard of right and wrong and just implement it into society? Maybe I think that. He thinks contrary. How do we know what is true? You can't just get up in front of people and say, yeah, consequences, empathy, that's the way we do things. That makes no sense in his worldview. Now, I can account for that as a Christian. I can account for why everyone in the world generally behaves a certain moral law. God made everyone in his image. He wrote the law upon your heart. So people generally know, like, murder is wrong. They may define murder differently, so we differ in culture, but mostly people know murder is wrong. Certain things like that. I can account for that as a Christian. The atheist cannot. All that is just chemicals reacting in a certain way for every other person. It doesn't have to be like that. Maybe Jeffrey Dahmer says, hey, I don't like that. I want to live how I want to live. You can't say he's wrong. You're the same product of nature that he is. There's no ultimate difference between you and him. You're both chemical reactions. What puts it in your place that you can say, oh, he's wrong and I'm right? Why? Are you higher up in the evolutionary chain? Of course not. You're the same level. So again, when and atheists do this a lot, they'll quote, all these passages from Scripture and say, God was immoral. He sent the flood into the world and Sodom and Gomorrah and the Exodus and all this stuff. And they'll say, and so therefore, God kills children, so that is immoral. Are you the standard of right and wrong, August? Should we all go to you for moral guidance? Whatever you say is by default true? But again, and he admitted this earlier, maybe he didn't want to, that he's just being arbitrary. He doesn't really know why those are immoral. He's just going off of certain feelings that he thinks are true. He has no rational foundation for that. Again, I can account for why he has feelings like that. He cannot. Which again gets back, he's borrowing from my worldview to refute my worldview. When he says I misrepresent evolution, I said that beneficial mutation, natural selection acts upon life, the ultimate origin of life, was ultimately by chance, as mentioned by Richard Dawkins. I didn't say it's chance all the way through. I know that's not the case, according to what evolutionists say. That's why I did not say anything like that. Never said it was chance all the way through. I said the ultimate origin of it. And if you keep pushing it back, why did the universe come into existence? There's no reason for it. Ultimately, it just happened. By chance, which means there's no reason for it really to be here. That's the way it is. So yes, if you reduce it back, it is ultimately by chance. So again, he's misrepresenting my position on what I said about evolution. I think it's interesting. He says, well, we share a common ancestry with all creatures. And so that's why we like most animals. We treat them fairly. And yet other animals do not act that way to other animals. A lion does not look at the antelope like we look at the lion or the antelope. Yet we all evolved by the same process in a common ancestry. So that purely that argument itself is just arbitrary. It's just absurd. He just thinks it's to be so. And yet if we observe that scientifically, that's not the case. I think it's interesting that he said, and I don't know if he caught this, because once you drop critical standards and believe in the supernatural, then it's pretty bad. And we kind of lost hope, is what he was implying, at least I think. But the fallacy in this is called bifurcation. He assumes there's just two possibilities. either be have critical standards, be rational, or believe in the supernatural. It could be both, which is exactly what I'm arguing here tonight. I don't leave my mind at the door when I debate about God's existence and the very standard of right and wrong. I've given logical arguments throughout here tonight, and I have addressed the issue using my mind, using critical arguments. He is the one who has not done that. He just asserted, again, what he said arbitrarily to be true. So really, we have a reverse in the situation, yet he doesn't see that. Which gets down to the core issue of this debate. It's not certain examples of things being right and things being wrong. It's the foundational issue. I have a worldview, Christian theistic worldview, the Bible. He has an atheistic worldview. It is in clash to the answer to this question being debated. So ultimately, at a worldview level, we have to see, at base, can it count for reality? In his worldview, if we sit around and we try to reason according to evolution and atheism, can we account for morality? We can't do that. All we get is baseless assertions. That's it. Ultimately, you can leave the room and conclude whatever you want, and it's just as true as what August says. That's the reality in his worldview. Just he doesn't want to admit that. And then he says, we can't comprehend God, and so then I've won the debate. Can you comprehend the universe entirely? No. Do you know something about the universe? Yes. And so again, this is the fallacy of bifurcation. He thinks you have to comprehend everything fully by which to know anything about it. That's not true. Can you fully comprehend what it means to be human? No. Does that mean you don't know what it is to be human? In some sense? No. It's not the same thing. And so when I say we can't fully comprehend God, that doesn't mean we don't know anything about God. I would say we know a lot about God. It's just that our knowledge will never get to full completion of understanding him. So again, that's not the same thing as what he's claiming it to be. Much time I got?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. I'll save it for we can do some more questions. Thank you.
Floor is open. I know you, so I can say questions, not statements.
I don't think I want to do that. Regarding with two opposing sides, is Christ the core of Christianity as you understand it? And is Christ who Christians follow? On the other end, what is the core of atheism and what do atheists follow? Or who or what?
It seems to me the definition of Christianity is that the person follows Jesus. It isn't. What else would the definition of Christianity be except for that? Is this coming through? And what do atheists follow? We follow the evidence. We follow the evidence as far as it leads. We have evidence for evolution. We have evidence that we weigh consequences when we make a decision. We don't just blindly do things. We weigh them. What's the likely outcome of this? What's the likely outcome of that? Cooperation. Nature rewards, not in the sense of a conscious rewarding, but those species that are social and they cooperate with, where the individuals cooperate with one another, are more likely to survive, and that's how they get rewarded. Not a conscious reward from a thinking nature, no, nature doesn't think. So, empathy, mirror neurons. So we see the source of empathy, the physical source. You know, John never once said how God gives us morality. Never once.
Mr. Kaus, 1 minute.
Yeah, I would agree that Christ is the very standard of Christians' lives. Notice he says, respond to what he said, he goes, we weigh consequences. There's a lot of consequences to helping old ladies or to killing them. What do we pick? That's the whole point. If it's just arbitrary, if it's just a grab bag, then I can pick anything I want to. And the consequences become meaningless, ultimately. And he says, empathy is the chemical reaction in our brains. Maybe chemicals in my brain react a certain way that you may not like rape or genocide or any of these things. If it's just chemical reactions, then how could you ever say what I think is wrong? If it's just